people have been wanting this for a long time. Like, we're not doing something new or making something up. We're trying to deliver justice and deliver on promises that have been made for a long time.
You could rethread your community. And as you rethread your community, I think the potential of the community expands,
Yes.
which means your choices expand.
When you're holding on to something, this is your posture. You're holding on. And sometimes it's like, if we just open up, like, you can position yourself to receive what the Lord has for you.
Welcome to the Rethreading Lives Podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristin Keen, and this is the Rethreading Lives Podcast. Welcome to Rethreading Lives Podcast. I am your host, Kristin Keen, and I am joined today by Travis Williams, who currently is working at LiftJax, one of the most exciting progressive organizations in Jacksonville right now. And Travis also serves on the board of Rethreaded, and he just completed his MBA, and he has 2 kids under the age of 4 now 4.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And invest in his community. He's one of my favorite leaders. I first met Travis. We first met at the Rail Yard Districts, which is the area of our town. It's a certain area of our town that we were trying to bring some revitalization to. And we met, and you were working for I don't remember what they did.
Merchant services.
Services.
Senior exec,
I remember the name. I just didn't want to say it.
client person. But yeah.
And we were like in the middle of this networking event, and we had this amazing conversation about kids and fostering. And I was like, I like that guy. And then I don't know how much, this is where my time gets a little fuzzy. Then I don't know how much longer it was, but we were recruiting board members, and I remembered you, and I was like, that guy, he has something special, and I want him on our board. And I eventually tracked you down because you weren't, now at that point, you had moved to a different organization.
Yeah.
You were working in the city.
Yep.
And then that is when we talked, and we met in my office.
Yes.
And we ended up talking for,
Oh, wow.
an hour and a half, longer than we had planned. And I was like, yeah, that guy has this is how I kind of refer it to. Like, I thought I was like being like, no one else is going to know what a treasure this guy is. And I'm discovering him. And I was like, oh no, he's already discovered. I was like, everyone already knows how awesome he is. So, is that when you joined the board though? Or what did we?
Yeah, we did. I don't think I gave you a direct answer. I remember not saying yes.
Yes, I do. Okay. That's right.
At first, because I was just growing up as a professional and as a, as a servant leader, and understanding capacity, and yes is sometimes bad. No is sometimes the right answer. And so, but really respected the organization and the work, had seen it grow from, what was the event downtown? Spark?
One Spark.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
Seen it grow from One Spark to where it was, and was impressed by the work. And my wife worked a lot with human trafficking in college. And so, honestly, the truth is, at first, I was interested, but it was an opportunity to serve with my wife. That was really the thing. I was like, hey, this is something that she can do. Life has grown, and, our children have grown. We didn't have any kids, I don't think then, we didn't have any then. Yeah, we have more than any now, more than none now. But that was really the first spark, was this is a chance to serve with my wife.
Which is awesome.
Turned into much more than that. But yeah, that was the beginning. Eventually got to a yes.
Which I was very happy about. And you brought other good board members with you.
Yeah.
I love it.
We've been able to.
Yeah.
Brought
Karina.
Yeah.
So Can you give a snapshot of what your life looks like now?
Yeah, so that was, when was that? I know it's before COVID. It's so funny that COVID is
it's the marker.
the marker. So that was.
Did you have a baby during COVID?
I did.
You guys did?
Yeah, my son was born in, I guess 2021 is still COVID, but yeah.
But you got to be in the hospital and be with her. Okay.
I did. Very limited. No one else could. So the first child, 2018, when Savannah was born, my neighbor was actually at the hospital and came to see her. But yeah, no one else was there for TJ. It was just my wife and I. So, let's say 5 years later, I think it was maybe 2018 we met. A few more kids now, and we still co-parent with my niece and nephew with their mom. And so there's normally 4 kids around the house. So ranging
ages
from 12
okay.
to 18 or 19 months. And so it's a very full, rambunctious, loud house at times, a bit chaotic, but a lot of love and joy. And so still married to the same lady, which is always important too.
You knew each other in high school?
Yes, we did. We've known each other since we were 13 years old. So we've been friends for over 20 years. College sweetheart. One of my biggest dreams was to marry like my friend, my best friend. I got lucky. Like I really did marry a person that was already my friend, already trusted person that I fell in love with too. And so fast forward now, personally, we're a blessed family. Kids are growing. My daughter is 4, going on 15, as most little girls are. She's blossoming. TJ is an 18-month-old that is wearing like 3T clothes. So he is a growing boy that's eating us out of a house and a home. Dealing with a middle schooler, son's in the 7th grade. Ooh, middle school is tough.
It's tough
for the churn. It is really tough for kids and for parents too. So, we're dealing with that dynamic of a kid that's growing into being a teenager soon. And so, all that stuff is happening. And then professionally, it's really evolved like a lot. You met me at what I call my wilderness years, because I cut my teeth, as you know, in the wealth management world. And so I built a practice fresh out of college, built a financial planning firm affiliated with Northwestern Mutual, which really put me in a lifestyle and economic situation that I did not see myself in at all at a fairly young age.
Like a good one.
A good one,
okay.
Yes, a good one. And just was not something the kid from the Eastside saw himself doing, and loved it, enjoyed it, built a business where I was able to serve folks. It was really my form of market, what I like to call, or what's not me, but what's referred to as marketplace ministry, and got a chance to really serve clients well, and really enjoyed it. Both of my degrees are in finance. But I was at a crossroads in my late 20s. I knew that is not what I was called to do. I knew I wasn't going to be doing that for 30 years. And after like 2 years of really pushing it away and running from it, I stepped away and shocked a lot of people. It was the scariest decision I've ever made. Had no plans, kind of like an Abraham moment, but I knew as clear as day it was what I was supposed to do. And I sold the business with no plans afterwards. So you caught me in that time period where I was really blindly following the Lord to figure out what was next. And some opportunities present themselves. I was doing things. I've always been good at sales. So we met. I was working in merchant services, and
when I met you, I knew. I was like, this is not where he's supposed to be.
No, it wasn't something I could do. But so yeah, that's when you met me. So fast forward, and I always tell people it wasn't until October of 2021 that I finally said, man, I get why you got me to do that. So from 2018 to fall of 2021, I was like, man, I still don't know why I made that choice, but I know it was the right one. And so fast forward now, I'm fortunate to really feel that sense of purpose, calling, again in the work that I get a chance to do every day now.
Which is what?
So I help lead an organization called LiftJax, fairly new organization, but in short order, it's really a nonprofit by tax status, but we really do neighborhood development work. Our mission, which we're tweaking with now, is to eradicate generational poverty through a development neighborhood revitalization lens. It was really spearheaded by some business folks, leading business folks, philanthropic community folks who were getting together several years ago to talk about poverty and how do we solve poverty in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is really big, and business folks like to see things. They don't believe in kicking the can on things. And they stumbled across this philosophy called purpose-built communities. Started in Atlanta, it's been used several cities across the country have used it. And they wanted to bring it to Jacksonville. And so LiftJax was birthed out of that. And we work in the historic Eastside neighborhood, which we can dive into that in more detail if you'd like. But
always, yes.
And so I was introduced early on by a mentor of mine who said, hey, there are conversations being had about your neighborhood. You should be involved in these conversations, firstly, and then also your professional background too. Like you fit at this table, and so this is a person I respected. It's Nina Waters. Shout out to Nina. She's a treasure. Happy retirement to you, Nina. Even you may see this, maybe not. But Nina's a very important person to me personally. And she said, you should be involved. And I just said, all right, yes, ma'am. Like, okay. And she connected me with my now colleague. And I credit the Lord using her. I know one of the things we'll talk about is community. And I think that the Lord speaks through his word, but his other MO is people. And if we're not connected to either of those, we will not hear from him, I don't think. Not clearly. And so I always credit her with getting me to this place of clarity because she just instinctively said, hey, you should be at this table. And it led me into purpose. So this work does neighborhood revitalization work and implementing this model that looks to bring strategic investments into a neighborhood. So we can get into some examples of that work, but that's essentially what we do, a focused area in one of the most important neighborhoods in Jacksonville. That only recently in the last few years, people are really realizing the jewel that is the Eastside. And we get a chance to do concentrated investments with community, not to community, that, are a range of projects that, again, we can go deeper into if you like to.
Well, I have some other questions first. Mm-hmm. All right. I'm digging in.
You're digging in, you're touching the mic.
I am. I'm getting comfortable. Okay. Because these are my questions. So when you were sharing your story, like where you've been, you said something to the effect of, I was just a kid from the East Side. I don't know what exactly you said. I didn't think this could happen to me. Mm-hmm. So like, what did you believe your potential to be as a kid from the East Side? And then what shifted to increase when we have the example of the sphere, like what in that time frame increased it to make you believe something different? And maybe you can help paint a picture of the East Side, because people probably have a view of what they think the East Side is like to grow up in.
Like the beaches? Did you grow up at the beaches?
Yeah.
So, point of reference, even for people who are in Jacksonville, so the historic East Side, or Out East as we called it, that's really was our name for the neighborhood. The reason why that's the East Side is you have to think of pre-consolidation Jacksonville. So Arlington was not Jacksonville or anything east of Arlington. That wasn't Jacksonville. Once you crossed the water, you were outside of Jacksonville. And so the East Side, where it's situated, is the east of the city pre the 1960s when consolidation happened. And so that's why it's called the East Side. So the East Side is situated just north of the Sports and Entertainment District, just west of Springfield, and just east of Talleyrand. So that area is considered now the historic East Side neighborhood. And
Rethreaded is on the border of the East Side in Springfield.
Exactly. You guys sit kind of right in the middle off of 8th Street. And so the East Side is a I've even though my family has been there for over 100 years, I'm an Eastsider at my core. It has shaped much of who I am as a person. In the past few years, I've learned so much more about this, what I like to call a sacred place, because the East Side is one of the last of its kind in Jacksonville. Almost every other historic Black neighborhood does not exist in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And whether that's La Villa, whether that's Brooklyn, whether that's Sugar Hill. A lot of folks have never heard of Sugar
I
Hill.
haven't.
Sugar Hill was a historically Black, wealthy neighborhood, kind of situated where UF Health is right now in Darnell Cookman. So before a highway was built through it in the urban revitalization work of the 1960s, which kind of ran through a lot of historic Black neighborhoods purposely, Sugar Hill was a neighborhood of prominence. And if you were kind of a wealthy upper class, like A.O. Lewis, the first Black millionaire in the state, he lived in that neighborhood. Jonathan Blodgett, one of the great Black architects of our city's history, lived in that neighborhood. Other professionals as well. None of those neighborhoods really exist as they did. And so the East Side is, we just learned this, it's now documented because it's a nationally registered neighborhood. It is the largest registered, intact, historic Black neighborhood in Florida.
What?
So there's no other there's no other neighborhood as large as the East Side that is a registered historic Black neighborhood in the state.
Wow.
And so it's a sacred place. There's so much history and people who've not just impacted Jacksonville, but have impacted our life as Americans that have come out of that neighborhood.
You got to tell. I always tell that story about who Air Randolph is. Wait, the street. Oh my gosh.
Philip Randolph.
Yes, A. Philip Randolph. Thank you. I was like, I'm messing this up right now. This is the moment, and I just messed it up.
So A. Philip Randolph is, he's one of those iconic figures, and he's a nationally known. I think he's known more nationally than locally. But I always tell people, hey, have you seen the "I Have a Dream" speech? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, the guy who introduced MLK, the guy who sent behind him the gray-haired man that was MLK's mentor is A. Philip Randolph. He's the godfather of the civil rights movement. He was born on Odessa Street, the same street I was born on, on the East Side. And so, and there are a plethora of other folks and places. The oldest, the first established, oldest AME church in Florida was in the East Side. It still is a congregation that worships there. And so many other things.
Zora Neale Hurston. My favorite author growing up.
Yes, she
when
lived
you told me when you
yeah.
when you like pointed to her house, I was
attended school there. I just learned she got kicked out of one of the schools there as a kid, got expelled. But all that history. So growing up there, a lot of that context I didn't have as a kid. What I did have was a very connected community, unlike many others, where you have people who've known each other, their families go back 2 and 3 and 4 generations. You don't see that a lot. And so the folks I grew up with, our parents grew up together, our grandparents grew up together, our great-grandparents knew each other in that neighborhood. And that created a connectivity that you don't see a lot in our American context anymore. I had a very strong family. I have an amazing family, and having that as a base, a faith-filled family too, and a mom who was, just amazing, is an amazing lady who really spoke into my brother and I beyond what we saw. And so we talk about like what I dreamed of being. Like I thought I could be anything, because she spoke that into us. That like she talked about college. I remember as a kid, like, who's going to college, Mom? Like, what are you talking about? Like, who are you talking about that's going to college? Because it wasn't a normal thing. But she talked about college as if it was normal. Like you boys are, and she followed that with action. The school she sent us to, the educational experience we had. And so I thought that things were possible. Because of the word and the belief that my mom family put into my brother and I. But you still are limited as an individual by what you see too. So what I saw is what I saw. And even though the neighborhood was a beautiful neighborhood and it's an iconic place, Jacksonville is the murder capital of Florida, much of my childhood. And a few of those happened in, my neighborhood as well. So you have this dichotomy of the best of times and the worst of times. And so you have dreams and aspirations. I know I wanted to be a business person. I know I wanted to wear suits to work. I just knew I wanted to do something in business. My mom's entrepreneurial. She's an entrepreneur, and I kind of got that bug too. My grandfather was entrepreneurial. And but I think for me, the introduction I had in college really changed trajectory of what I thought was possible. I got into an industry in financial services. And I had a coach. I was in my early 20s, and we were in a study group, and he was asking us what we wanted to have income wise. And in so many ways, he told me, like, you have a small mind. I was like, bro, you don't know me, man. Like, first off, you're not going to call me out in front of these people. But he's like, yeah, you think very small for the industry you're in. And you should think bigger or find something else to do. I was like, okay. And that was really a change for me because he tapped into something that was there. I just had to not have this wonky idea about doing well financially and those things. And he tapped into something that was there. It kind of unleashed something in me that helped change trajectory of me as an individual. So that's a long way of talking about that change and growing up and, some pivotal moments with folks who kind of spoke into my life and help me believe.
I'm going to ask a question. And I'm just asking it. So I was talking to someone, you came up and someone said, because we have these debates a lot about breaking the cycle of poverty. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of like this one set of people who are like, anyone can get out. They're just choosing to stay in. Mm-hmm. And then there's like the other extreme where like, we need to do everything for these people to help them. Yep. And this person was arguing his point about, everyone has a choice and they're in this situation because they're just making bad choices. This is the argument we hear all the time at Rethreaded about our women. Yeah. And he goes, well, Travis made it out. And I was like, well, my hunch is Travis also had deeply good parents and a stable family that loved him with no addiction. And he was surrounded by people. Yeah. And he had this circle. And I was like, I don't think a majority, I think, and it kind of like made me mad because it was just, it's like, if one person can do it, then it's everyone should be able to do it. Yeah. I don't know. This is what I was processing today and why it made me mad and what you would say, because now you're back in the neighborhood where you're holding all these beautiful things. And then you're also well aware of there are hard things there. Mm-hmm. And you are helping people kind of rebuild, not to get out, but to thrive there.
Yes. Yeah. I do hear that. And
you do hear that.
Yeah, definitely. Because like, hey, if you did it, why isn't everyone else doing it?
Yeah.
And first off, like there's such a fallacy to that argument. Just logically speaking, we don't transfer that. If a person was like, hey, I've been drinking and driving for the last 20 years of my life and I've never gotten an accident. If I can do it, everybody else can drive drunk too and get home. You say that, okay, that's silly. Like something, you've been lucky. You probably hit someone and you didn't. And so that logic does not carry well. But I think when we transfer it over and, race and classism and all that stuff has something to do with why people have this pull themselves up by their own bootstraps mentality, which is also a fallacy. MOK has a great interview on that I challenge people to go listen to.
I want to see it. Maybe, and we could put the link. We'll put the link.
Yeah.
In the comments.
It's a really good interview where he talks about this fallacy of privilege in America of this, hey, just pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And we are a subsidized society. We have been built on subsidy. And what I mean by that is when you look at our advancement into the West, he really eloquently illustrates this of people were advancing to the West through subsidy, land grants, given land, giving grants to figure out how to farm land.
Took land from the original owners. Yeah.
Homestead, which was just another subsidy to say, we're going to give you homestead exemptions for you to be able to further do this. We have grown on subsidy, not on pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps. We have not. If you look at the New Deal of the 1950s, after the Great Depression, how do we get out of it? President Roosevelt and the New Deal to say we are going to infuse our base with subsidy to get housing, and the Federal Housing Authority being launched and making more affordable. The Color of Law is another great book to put in the link that talks about the infusion of capital into the average American done through subsidy. Federal Housing Authority launched to make it much more easier for the average American to access a home, which generated the biggest wealth growth that the world has ever seen. We've never had a middle class like America has, and that's been done primarily through a home, buying it, holding it, being able to refinance it, borrow from the equity, all that stuff. That is subsidy. That is people being given something to help them. So when people say that, I'm like, okay, so we've been doing that for a long time. Now in 2023, you want to tell me pull myself with my own bootstraps? Like, that's cool, but give me the nice boots. Give me the boots first. And don't tell a bootless man, in the words of MLK, to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. When someone gave you your boots, and maybe not you, but they gave your great-grandfather the boots. And now you can afford boots. You don't need to be given any, but it's because your great-grandfather got the GI Bill. And that GI Bill changed the trajectory of his family. My grandfather, who's a military vet, could not get the GI Bill.
Because
he was Black. So those things, so, you know, that the context of that's context I always give when people are trying to go down there. Like, hey, let's break down the fallacy I see in this argument. But for me, I mean, it was a total community effort. You know, I should be a statistic. You said parents, like I was raised by a single parent. I didn't meet my father until I was in my 20s.
Gotcha.
You know, so a lot of those kind of stereotypes, I fit some of those. I'm one of 9 kids.
Really? I did not know that. I've only heard Chuck know your brother.
That's the only one I grew up with, only one I knew about until I was in my 20s.
So not from your...
Yeah, not from my mom. So
you didn't grow up with 9 brothers and sisters?
No, I did not. Didn't meet them until I was in my 20s. So, you know, all those challenges of growing up in the context I grew up in, if it wasn't for people all along the way, a great family, a mom who was like, you're going to this kind of school. And then every step of the way, an uncle who was very pivotal in my life and development, grandparents.
So you had step of the way. Male role models, even though, I mean, that's kind of like Jason too. His dad died when he was really young.
Yeah, definitely. I had amazing.
His grandparents.
My grandfather and my uncle, my grandfather in particular, was all the dad I needed. Seeing him, and, you know, I aspired to carry myself in the way that he carried himself.
What was he like?
So, Harry Williams.
Harry Williams.
Harry O. Williams.
Oh, I had an Uncle Harry, a great Uncle Harry.
I got an Uncle Harry too, his son. Harry Williams II.
That's crazy. Okay.
So Harry Williams was, he was that dude. He was a quiet man, but when he spoke, you listened. He's a strong man. He was someone a lot of people depended on. A lot of people depended on. He and my grandmother. They were just one of those couples. I had someone describe them as the Huxtables. Recently, someone I've known since I was a kid, and they were talking about my grandparents recently. Like, man, your grandparents are like the Huxtables for the hood. Like, they had a washing machine in their house in the 60s. Like, you don't understand what that was like to have a washing machine in your house in the 60s. People didn't have that. And they had that in the Eastside. And a lot of that was due to my grandfather just being a man that believed in things like delayed gratification and, you know, was a provider and was a protector and, you know, a faithful man. So yeah, those are that was Harry. One of the most important people to me in my life. So I had all those things help me to figure things out, and it definitely wasn't me just choosing. And there were choices I made, and I'll give people that point. But I think the gentleman you were speaking, or whoever it was, I think they don't realize the options are what's different. It's not just about making better choices. It's what options do people have? And your zip code, we talk about at scale, not individual outliers, but at scale, your zip code and where you're born can determine the options you have. And yeah, there may be a few people who quote get out, but options are different. They really are.
We talk a lot about choice at Rethreaded, because that's what everyone says about our ladies. And one of our survivors said that to me one time. You're only as good as the options before you.
Yep.
And it's like, so when I was in India, I was with this organization called Word Made Flesh, and I was so attracted to it because a lot of I learned so much about Jesus and justice, and they talked a lot about the upside down kingdom. Like the first shall be last and last shall be first. And Jesus is the upside down kingdom, and he values the ones.
The least of these, yeah.
The least of these, yeah. And we've been talking about what's been happening through me doing this podcast is this re-evaluating what justice looks like. And because I've been thinking about our women, I think about people coming out of trauma, growing up over and over again in trauma, getting into addiction, trafficking. And I think the Rethreaded process is justice. Because you could rethread your community. And as you rethread your community, I think the potential of the community expands, which means your choices expand. And as you break generational poverty, options expand. Yeah. And then your community, you as an individual are healthier to choose also the options in a healthy way. That's because I know trauma, generational poverty, it steals your ability to even imagine choices or something different.
It definitely does.
So when you go back to the Eastside, what do you see now? Like, what do you see now? And then what do you want to see? And what have you learned?
I think for me, what I see is beauty, again, sacred place, opportunity as well. I don't romanticize the work. Cleve Warren is another mentor of mine. Cleve's an Eastsider too. And so we connect so well over that. He remembers the Eastside that I never saw, which was this vibrant, bustling community that he grew up in. And the opportunity there to not just return it to some point in the past, because we're at a different place in our American experience, but to help revitalize it in a way that brings some of that vibrancy back to the community and deals with some of the issues that the community's had. I mean, a lot of those issues aren't at the fault or the blame of the community. I mean, it's been dealt a hand in many ways. And I think in our American Western experience, we have an either or. And a lot of times they're both and. They're both, people do make choices. Yes, but people also have different options. Both of those can be true. And so I think for me, it's seeing the opportunity of, okay, what are the ways to bring investments back to the neighborhood that a lot of other communities get? How do we bring those back in a way that doesn't go over the head of current residents and people who are there, and builds a community for someone else? Because that's a lot of times what happens. You're building it for people who you want to come, not for who's here. I think for us, it's how I see it, it's the opportunity to work with those who are there. And what I've learned is that, we aren't starting something new. We're standing on the shoulders of people who've been wanting and doing this for a neighbor for a long time.
Mm.
I didn't know this until a year or so ago. There's a lot of plans that have been done about the neighborhood, like 8 plans in the last 25 years, just it's been planned out. And it's just how
planned out by like people in the community.
people in the community, outside this mixture.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fascinating. It just shows how the Lord works and how He is omnipotent and guides us and knows what's best for us. I was reading through one of the plans in the office, and when I get like a plan or some big doc, I always go to the front. Okay, who's at the table? Who's the advisory group or whatever who kind of put this together, just to see who the players were. So I'm reading through this list of this plan that was done, I don't know, 20 years ago. And I'm looking at the advisory council for it. Like the second or third name is Harry Williams. Like, what? I've been hearing about this plan. I've been talking about it. My grandfather was one of the people that helped. I mean, it tore me up that day. Like, it wrecked me. Like, I was like, I'm not breaking down crying in this office. And then I later learned that he was the president of the first CDC, which is a community development corporation that deals with basically the work we do in some parts. The first one was founded in 1975, and my grandfather was the president of the organization as a resident. And man, just learning that people have been wanting this for a long time. Like, we're not doing something new or making something up. We're trying to deliver justice and deliver on promises that have been made for a long time. In God's timing, in His omnipotence, He just has it at this time. The community gets a chance to realize some of that. And fortunately, some of his counterparts, folks that he knew, are still alive to see it. But that's been a big learning, is that we're running our leg of this journey, and and we're not the savior in the story. People paint us as a lot of things because of the people around our table, and that's just how we like to find a savior. But we're just running our leg of this relay. That folks for a long time have been wanting the best for their neighborhood, and we just get a chance to deliver on some of the things that folks have been wanting for a long time. So that's some of the things I see, and some of the things I've learned is to handle it with care, because you didn't just make this up in a vacuum.
This is the most amazing story I've heard in a long time. When you were describing your grandfather, like describing his character and what he is, I was like, that is Travis. Oh, Travis is just like his grandpa.
Man, that means so much.
And then he had started this work.
Yeah. Yep. One of the neat things I'm doing now is,
I don't even have...
because you go on Sunbiz, you can look up any organization that's been filed up to, whenever they started filing stuff. And someone sent me a screenshot of the Sunbiz filing. They're like, hey, this is your granddad. I was like, what? So I'm going through the list of people, and some of the names, like, yeah, I know that name. I remember that name from being a kid. But one of the things I'm trying to do now, most of the folks who were on the team with him have deceased. They are deceased, rather, unfortunately. But there's one person, his wife is still alive, and I know her son, who also grew up in the neighborhood. So I'm trying to connect with her, because I just want to interview them. Like, what were their plans? What were they working on? What were their dreams for the neighborhood? What did they want to see in the Eastside? So I think we're doing some of the things that they wanted to do, but we're just connected. It's kind of like Hebrews talks about that cloud of witnesses. We're running our leg of the race. And that's really the context of that Hebrews chapter, is run the race. Paul is talking about in context like a relay race. It's like run your leg, like the games back then in Rome, like run your leg of the race. There's a cloud of witnesses that are watching over us, and he's a part of that for me, and I get a chance to run my leg of the race.
So I'm thinking, I have so much thought, but I'm thinking of time. I mean, your story, like we talk about a full circle moment, which is when you have these moments in your life where it's like you can hold all the hard and all the good.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these moments kind of where like it all makes sense.
Yep.
And I feel like that moment when you saw your grandfather on the paper is like a full circle moment.
It was.
Like just wove it all together.
Yep.
In this.
It did.
Gosh.
It got me out of it was like if there was an official time where I was like, hey, like, okay, I'm out of the wilderness now. Like I've made it to the promised land of understanding. It was right around that season of, okay, God, like, this is why you have me here. Like, this is a culmination of talents I've developed, all that stuff, your resume stuff, public sector, private sector, entrepreneurship, success, all that stuff. But then like, no, like there's something deeper to all that as well. Like you did all that too. You developed me, allowed me to have that development too. But that was definitely a full circle moment in time. Made me feel very connected.
Yeah.
To him and again, to folks who've been wanting the best, just like any other person, wanting the best for their neighborhood.
And then, because in it, we talk so much about purpose and vision, like to deeply know your purpose and then to have a vision that things can change and things can get better. Like how have these experiences developed your purpose and your vision? Yeah.
I mean, it's helped define it, definitely. One of the things for me, I always get a sense of change. The Lord has His way of, I think, speaking to all of us, but even when I don't know what the change is going to be, like I get a sense of it, like, all right, there's some change that's about to happen. I felt it when I made the decision to sell my practice. I just kind of ignored Him for 2 years until He really just got a hold of me, and I was like, okay, all right, I surrendered, Lord. But I remember my previous role I was in, Nehemiah was a book that I just fell in love with. He became my favorite biblical person. And I read the book, I don't know how many times. I don't know, in a year, less than a year's time span, reading it and listening to it, maybe dozens of times. Went through that book and didn't know necessarily why, but now, like, this is my Nehemiah work. And Nehemiah was sent by the king with the resources back to home to help rebuild it. It wasn't just him doing it, though. He just was a part of it. He was in a leadership role, but he was just a part of a team of folks that were doing it. Ezra was there and doing on the spiritual side. So for me, the Lord used that account of Nehemiah to give me a glimpse into, this is the work I'm going to have you doing for the next season of your life. And that's how I describe it to people who understand that context. Like, it really is for me a Nehemiah work, and I've been blessed to have some to be able to help steward a set of resources that help rebuild my neighborhood. And so that has been, for this season of life, part of my purpose and calling. For right now.
So then I can ask you some questions, because I know a lot of people, okay. Let me give you some context. So we talk about this Rethreaded process all the time, and we watched this video that talked about the value of time. There's a spreadsheet, and it has 1 to 96 on the spreadsheet. We'll put this in the link too. And then across here were little boxes. Each box was a week of your life. So you had to do this practice where you had to block out all the life that you have lived already and black it out, because it's done, because you can't get it back. And then here's the chunk you have left in your life. Most of us won't live till 96. So maybe 75. And it's a visual on like, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
I feel like you have figured something out. Have you ever Because I think people will get caught in this and they would have stayed in the financial. Because it's secure, they make a lot of money, and they would have stayed there. And suddenly, the weeks are just ticking off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you, and I think that it's easy to tell people, like, everyone thinks that if they want to do good in the world, they're like, well, I'm not going to start a nonprofit. And I was like, good, don't start a nonprofit. Yeah. It's hard work. But there's transitions in people where they start to come alive, even if they're in the financial institution.
Yes.
So can you give some insight into someone who is maybe in that position in life? Maybe it's comfort. Maybe it's they feel a duty because they have to make this money. Because I feel like you could have gone the financial way and made a whole lot of money, supported your family in a totally different way. And you are choosing a different direction where you will not be as financially secure. I mean, you work at a nonprofit now. Yeah. Let's just be real. No one does it for the money.
and at the same time, like I'm doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're fortunate to be I'm doing okay. And maybe, what some people may consider better than the average person in the industry we're in. So the Lord has blessed my obedience, and put me in a place where, I'm fortunate. Like I'm fortunate. I'm doing okay. But at the same time, one of the biggest lessons that I learned early on was how little fulfillment money brings. That's a lesson a lot of people don't get early.
No.
But when you're in your 20s, and you see people making a lot of money and the lack of fulfillment they have, you quickly learn that, man, there's a lot of stuff money can buy you. As my pastor often says, it can buy you a bed, but it can't buy you sleep. It can buy you a house, but it can't buy you a home. Maybe it can buy you a spouse, but it can't buy you love. I mean, a lot of stuff that it can buy, but there's much more meaningful stuff that it never can buy. So I got that lesson early on that this is a blessing from God. I'm glad I have it, but this does not come with answers to eternal questions and longings that every person has. And so that context is something that I would offer up people to dive into. Even if you're doing well financially and hating your life can be happening at the same time. Yes. I saw it all the time with people who were doing very well, older, doing very well. I'm like, man, I do not want this person's life. Like, their balance sheet looks good, but I don't want this person's life. I don't think they want their life. And so I think for me, it was as a person of faith, I read this book, Counterfeit Gods, Timothy Keller.
Oh, yeah.
And
got to put that on the list.
Yeah. And I read that book young age in my professional life. It really just came down to me. It's like, who am I going to serve? What am I going to serve? Is this career I'm in, my God? Is this comfort it's provided me? Like, am I really that afraid to make this decision? Like, is God not God? Is he not God? Like, is it a possibility that what he has for me on the other side of this decision is exceedingly abundantly above all I can ask or think? Like, is that a possibility? And when I realized the answer is yes, there's something greater he has on the other side that's greater than the money I'm making. Then I was able to say, okay, like, this is going to be tough for me to get through. But I'm going to get through it. And I'll tell you now, like, I have way more peace now. Like, I make a fraction of what I made at 27. But I have way more peace now than, and I wasn't a person that didn't have peace then necessarily, but it got to the point where I knew that's not what I was supposed to be doing. And the peace left, the peace left the room. And I would just challenge anyone listening to realize that what you're holding on to now, our pastor has this saying a lot, that God gives seed to the sower. But if your hands are closed, this is not a posture of receiving. When you're holding on to something, this is your posture. You're holding on. And sometimes it's like if we just open up, which is also letting go because you're not holding on, like you can position yourself to receive what the Lord has for you. And it is fearful. It is scary. There may be things you lose. But I just firmly believe that if you're following the Lord and his leading and calling and purpose, what's on the other side of that decision is so much greater than what you have now. And it may be financially too. It may not be. But the peace that surpasses all understanding is way beyond any check you can make financially anyway. So that was a pretty long response. Hopefully that answered the question.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good because I'm literally at this point in my life where I feel like God is like, I need all your focus to be here doing this. And I keep not. Mm-hmm. And I can feel the hold on my life. And I have been at points like that in my life where I was holding hard. Oh, and it was so scary to let go.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's frightening. Like I think I may like maybe I was almost semi-depressed for a little bit. I was in the twilight zone every day. I literally would go to my office and sit for like 6 hours and almost do nothing just because I knew like I have a decision to make.
Wow.
I was doing stuff, but I wasn't at the same time I was doing nothing. I just was dreading the decision. Like, what are people going to think?
Yes.
I have so much identity in this work. Like I'm this young, successful advisor and what are people going to think? And clients are going to be, and all this stuff. Like
it's the blame and shame.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Just heaps on.
Yep. Just not, I talk myself, okay, what if I do this? Okay. No. I could do this. Oh yeah. That's, then I get back to that's not going to, that's not going to work. Like that is not what he's telling you to do. And you know it. And so it is scary, but that's faith. Faith and fear are very much related. And that is faith and surrender. But it's like, okay, who's in control? Like, am I in control or someone greater than me in control? And I continue because I'm figuring it out. I haven't figured it out. I'm figuring it out because that's also a daily thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about, stuff that I got right. I mean, there's stuff on a daily basis that like, hey, there's too much fear. I ain't doing that. I'm taking this safe route.
Which there's a lot of grace for that as well.
A lot of grace for that. But I'm on the other side of fear is where I think, and it's crazy. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. We get this differently than most people. Is that on the other side of fear, there's some fascinating things that happen.
That you will not trade for anything.
For anything.
Nothing.
There's things that safety will never produce. It can't produce it because there's no tension in safety, and growth comes from tension. Like just like working out, you give tension.
That's good.
The muscle grows, like first natural then spiritual. Like that happens as well. And so, but that fear piece of tapping into, what is the right thing to do, but you're afraid to do it. The things that come on the other side, there's so much fruit that comes on the other side of that.
Yeah, because I think about the moment when I came back from India and then I got a job for the government. I was a dietitian. I had insurance for the first time in my whole life. I got my first paycheck and I was like, this is for me. It's like, it was like for the first time in my whole life, I had a 9-to-5 stable job. And I also knew that I was supposed to quit in 2 to 3 years. And I quit that. One of the scariest things I did, but I remember the night before Rethreaded opened. And I was like what have I done? I just quit everything stable. Yeah. I have this crazy idea based on t-shirts to help women leave human trafficking in my city. And I remember I was with my friend Ryan and I literally broke down sobbing the night before. And he just gave me this huge hug right in front of Rethreaded, and he's like, it's gonna be okay. Next day, 500 people showed up. And like
other side of fear.
Other side of fear.
Yep.
And yet and right now in my life, I'll just be a little vulnerable. I run this side hustle, okay? It's so ridiculous. Sell things on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. I love old treasures. I love to treasure hunt. It gets all my entrepreneurial stuff. It is also so distracting. And I've been kind of like slowly trying to let it go. And then I just end up picking it back up.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm afraid of yet. I haven't labeled it down, but it feels clear. There is a direction and there is more here. And I'm going to experience this more. But yeah, I'm still, it's a change. It's scary. It's like the next level of Rethreaded and leadership and all this stuff. And whew.
We all have our, the Lord, when he, resurrected Lord came back and addressed some of his disciples. Peter was one of them. And, they had gone back fishing. They had gone back fishing.
To what they knew.
Going back to what they knew. And we all have our going back fishing things that we retreat to sometimes. And the Lord has to show up sometime and say, hey, do you love me more than this? And that happens in big ways and small ways at the same time. But yeah, I think we all have our fishing rod, whatever that may be for us.
And it's a good reminder that the change also doesn't happen. Usually it doesn't happen overnight. It's like little tiny decisions over and over and over again for a lengthy period of time and that I forget that sometimes because I'm like an extremist. I just jump in and want to change everything. But no, it's doing the right thing over and over again.
Yep. Over and over again.
Over and over again on a daily basis. I have 2 questions left. I know you've already shared the most amazing full circle moment I have heard. I mean, like, that is so clear and good. Oh, and then do you have any other full circle moments in your life that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do. I think for me too, another kind of full circle moment was falling in love with my wife. Yeah. So meeting her in 9th grade, being friends throughout high school, kind of knowing we kind of liked each other, but I was not the dude she needed in her life at high school at all. I would have dropped the ball on that really bad if we had dated in high school. So thank God that we didn't. But my wife and I both came to know the Lord around the same time in college. Separate cities, but similar spiritual awakening experiences in college. Both were in like leadership roles in a campus ministry on our campuses. And we always were in contact. I'd go to Orlando to party and, there'd be a group of us and, she'd be part of that group that I'd go visit with when I was there. But re-engaging each other again, like through this spiritual awakening that we were having together and this collision course we were on that, we were both seeking the Lord and he just had us on a collision course where we bumped into each other. And have been with each other since. And so, that was just a beautiful, full circle moment of, so like, man, like I got lucky. Like I married my friend. Like there's a lot of stuff I know. You don't know everything, but I always wanted that relationship to be with a person that I already had a level of trust and loyalty with. That was my friend, but that I also was madly in love with at the same time. Like I just always wanted that. And, I got that in college and I've had it ever since. But that's kind of I'll say that's a full circle moment.
That's a good moment.
Yeah.
Because I know you really still like her.
I do like her. Like she is my friend. And she's a person I enjoy being with. We like being around each other. You know, we're 11 years into our marriage. So we passed the decade mark. We've had a couple kids. You know, we've gone through that. I think they say like the 7-year mark is where, you know, marriage just goes through a thing. But I can truly say, like I love traveling with my wife. The best person for me to go on a trip with is my wife. Best person for me to go on a trip with. And we enjoy being with each other. And that is something that I want to make sure we always have with each other. You know, as well as us fighting to stay in love and madly in love with each other. And, you know, that looks different 20 years in than it did on your honeymoon. But, you know, for us, like our friendship is a base of who we are. And it's something that keeps us close. And it's special to me. To me, it's special. It's knowing that I gotta trust my wife with my life. I trust her like with everything, and that's important for me.
Okay, what are your closing thoughts? What do you want to say to the world?
Say to the world.
Can I tell you what Jason said? We did this thing at work one time. I used it in my training. No. And it was like, if you had 30 seconds to tell the world anything, what would it be? And mine was like, you have so much worth. You have so much value. The world needs you. And Jason's was like, mind your own business. And it was so
mind the business that pays you.
Yeah, yep. And he's like, and that's it. So I'd say we'd have a lot. We'd have no wars. We'd have no conflict. Just mind your business.
Mind your business.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have anything as profound as both of the things you guys said. I mean, I would say for me, I don't know if I have a message for the world. I've become a much stronger believer in like local context. I think social media has made us so much citizens of the world that we like jump over our local context. So I would say for me, like just in the city we're in, the time we're in, and maybe this isn't just for believers, but I think a big part of it is like get to work. Like get to work. There's work to be done, and many of us on the sideline not doing our part to make this world everything that it can be. Many of us as believers, like we're not advancing the kingdom. We're not bringing righteousness, joy, and peace in the Holy Ghost, which is the kingdom of God. Like we're not doing the work of bringing that to the marketplace. So my message to people, like get to work. Like the work of loving your spouse, taking care of your kids, honoring your spouse, bringing your best to work, your best, highest self to work every day with excellence and ethics and morals, the best service, the best leadership, whatever it is. I mean, if you clean buildings, what does it look like for you to do it with excellence? If we all like got to work and did what we were supposed to do, like just imagine how much better things would be if everyone showed up with that level of excellence and service to mankind and our neighbor, loving our neighbor as ourselves. So yeah, get to work. I'll see you at work.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for your leadership at Rethreaded, your leadership in our community. I would follow you. I'll follow you anywhere. And I'll just leave this one thought about you. I remember this conversation we had in front of Rethreaded, and we were talking about how to reduce crime in a neighborhood. And you're like, have good landlords who care and who won't tolerate crime in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I remember from that moment on, I was like, all right, this is it. This is how we change the world. And like that nugget though has stuck with me, and I come back to it over and over again. But I feel like I'm just going to end on this, is that it's also solving crime through relationship and people doing the work.
Yes.
Doing their job with excellence.
Yes.
In their space that they've created.
Yep.
Like being a good landlord changes your city.
It does.
So like, that's what, and you prove that every day, and that's a good word to end on, is do your work with excellence and you change the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This has been great. I enjoyed this. We got to do it again.
All right. Thanks so much. That's all I'm going to say, because it takes me forever to make a point.
Period. We'll put a period on that.